Yeah, he's playing certainly a lot better in June 2015 than he did in June 2014. I mean, he looks, I think, similar to the way he looked at times during training camp last year when he looked impressive, and then he had a really good preseason, of course, as well, where he was impressive. I think he's right about, around there. When you first enter, the Eagles don't really run much of a complicated offense, but it really doesn't matter how complicated. I mean, it could be the least complicated offense ever, and any quarterback going into a new offense is going to struggle right away. And I think that's what we saw this time last year with Mark Sanchez. So while I do think he does look good, I'm not saying that he's anything close to Tom Brady at this point.
No, and obviously a lot of people are sour on Sanchez, but how realistic at this stage of the game? I know we got a ways to go, but how realistic are the comments that Chip Kelly made that this is going to be a competition, or is it realistically only if Bradford just can't move?
I don't buy it personally. They gave up a 2 and Nick Foles for Sam Bradford, and they're paying him $13 million this year. So if Sam Bradford can't play because he's not healthy, then Mark Sanchez will be the starter. If he's healthy and it's anywhere near close, the starter is going to be Sam Bradford. I mean, Sam Bradford would have to be absolutely horrific during training camp and during the preseason, and Mark Sanchez would have to be lights out in training camp and in the preseason, in my opinion, for him to legitimately win a quarterback competition with Sam Bradford, just based on – I mean, they have so much invested in Sam Bradford at this point. And frankly, I think that Sam Bradford is, a more talented player. You can see early on here that clearly Bradford has a much better arm than any of the other 3 quarterbacks there. So, I think it's just a matter of Bradford getting his feet under him a little bit more. I saw improvement in that regard from him from a week ago to when they last practiced a couple days ago here. So, yeah, I think he's going to continue to improve there. There's 7 weeks until training camp begins, so there's more time for him to heal up a little bit. So, again, like I said, I think it'd have to be just an absolute horrific performance by Bradford in training camp in the preseason, or he'd have to not be healthy for Mark Sanchez to start the season as the starter.
And as you have over at phillyvoice.com, we could get, or it could be a Nancy Kerrigan type situation.
Well, yeah, I mean, if Mark Sanchez wants to take Sam Bradford's injuries into his own hands, then certainly that could help his chances too.
Jimmy Kempski's with us, phillyvoice.com. He's got a nice animation of how Mark Sanchez can sneak in there. I think you just said something interesting, though, that it's clear that Bradford's arm is better, and that's with less than 100% strength in that knee. And we all know that throwing the football, your legs are a big part of the strength as well, and yet his arm is still good. I think that's a good sign for Bradford.
Yeah, he's all arm. He's not. He can step into throws a little bit, and it's not like. And first of all, his ACL tear is in his left knee, so it's not like he's pushing off on the knee where he had the ACL tear. So, I mean, he can push off to some degree on his throws, but for the most part, like his footwork, his feet aren't completely under him at this point. But yeah, I mean, he fires lasers. I've been impressed with his arm strength so far, and I've seen quarterbacks that can swing it. Like I've watched Michael Vick for years in training camp. I did miss the Donovan McNabb years, but certainly he had a good arm as well. And I've seen quarterbacks that don't have good arms, and there have been a bunch of them in Philly in backup roles. So, yeah, I mean, he certainly does have some arm strength, even with, not having full mobility.
Jimmy, obviously the wide receivers are a very big question mark, a lot of unknowns here. What is your early take on the wide receiver position here? And obviously their first-round pick is a wide receiver, so a lot of people would like to hear how he looks so far. But, this is a question mark position, but should it be a big question mark, or does it look better than maybe anticipated? Aguilar
looks good. I've been impressed with him so far. He's made some really nice catches. What I've been impressed about him so far is the way he attacks the football in the air. He's made a lot of high-point catches early, and that's not even something that I saw a lot of him do at USC, but it's something that I saw a lot of at OTAs. And really the positions that you can evaluate that you can really evaluate at all are wide receiver, cornerback. You can tell a little bit from the quarterback so far, because they're in shells and shorts. So you can do no evaluation whatsoever of offensive line play and defensive line play. But the wide receivers, you can see them on the routes. You can see them competing with the other cornerbacks. And like I said, he's been impressive so far, as has Jordan Matthews. I think both players are going to be really good football players in the NFL, especially Jordan Matthews. I think Jordan Matthews kind of gets a little bit underrated both nationally and locally. I think people kind of see him as really not a fast player. I disagree with that. I think people think that he doesn't do a good job getting separation from opposing defensive backs. I disagree with that as well. I think he's a really good player and is only going to get better. And just the season that he had last year is maybe a little bit underappreciated just because of the crazy number of rookie wide receivers that really had great seasons last year. I think that was really an anomaly. So if that didn't happen and Jordan Matthews kind of had the season that he did last year, I think he'd be getting a lot more attention than he is now. But Jordan Matthews is a really good player, and I think Nelson Aguilar is going to be one too. Good
stuff there. And obviously the secondary side, if you got wide receivers, on the other side, those guys are going up against them, and that's going to be a big – I think the training camp battle in the secondary is going to be very intriguing. I thought it was hilarious the other day. You know, somebody asked about Jalen Watkins playing safety, and he said, no, he's playing corner. But today he is. Maybe tomorrow he'll play there. I don't really care where he plays. Is that really what the secondary is going to be like? Hey, today play some corner, see if you impress us. Tomorrow maybe go play safety. Maybe you can. Are there multiple spots open and multiple opportunities to win them?
I think those comments were really more about Jalen Watkins than all the safeties and corners in general. Though there are going to be some guys that get looks at both spots, especially the young guys. They're going to teach them all the positions on the back end. Corey Umlin prefers to do that than just have them focus on one position like they did or like they've done in the past. So I think that'll change a little bit. But in terms of the corner position, obviously Byron Maxwell is going to be at one spot, and then really the training camp battle to watch will be, Nolan Carroll, who is a veteran, who, has experience playing. He started with the Dolphins a few years ago. Didn't get a ton of playing time his first year at the Eagles, but got on the field here and there. And he'll, of course, be up against the rookie second-round pick, Eric Rowe, who has outstanding size-speed combination. Personally, I think they'd love to see Eric Rowe go out and win that job, obviously, and ultimately I think he will.
That's interesting because, we talked, I think, about this before, that Thurman had been a corner and Rowe had played safety. Now they're both kind of flip-flopping here. But is Thurman looking like he is a comfortable guy and that he will be a capable safety?
Well, Chip Kelly talked in his press conference about how he has looked the most impressive among all the defensive backs just in terms of getting his hands on the football, breaking, with pass breakups and things of that nature. And some people thought that might be, well, that's just him kind of pushing Earl Wolf, saying like this guy's going to take your job in a not so veiled way. But Byron Maxwell actually kind of said the same thing about Walter Thurman, that he's been impressive and that he's got his hands on a lot of passes. Has had a ton of pass breakups early in OTAs. So it does seem in the early going anyway that he is adjusting fairly well to that safety spot. And he kind of fits what the Eagles prefer at safety. They like guys that can drop down and cover slot corners man-to-man. Obviously, Thurman did that as a slot corner in Seattle when they went to the Super Bowl. So that's a player that does some things that the Eagles prefer. Obviously, it's a little bit different from playing cornerback and that you're playing on the back end on occasion. So, I think I think the Eagles almost kind of prefer guys with corner experience to play safety. So, maybe they can get away with a guy like him. And it's not as if he's someone that shies away from contact. I think in the past he's a guy that's been willing to stick his nose in there and make tackles. So he's not going to be Brian Dawkins or Steve Atwater back there on the back end, but I think he'll be a competent tackler and he's a good cover guy.
Jimmy Kempski's with us. PhillyVoice.com covers the Eagles. We all know the story about 3 quality inside linebackers, and I know he kind of scoffed and said, come on, we're at May 28th here when he was talked about it last week, but is it going to be a real challenge for them to get all 3 of those guys playing time? I mean, you're going to be able to keep all those guys happy, and are they happy, or is it right now they're just kind of looking around like, how is this going to work?
Well, I think the way they see it, they meaning the players themselves, and I don't want to speak for them, but I would think that D'Amico Ryans would maybe not embrace but be okay with a role in which he wasn't a 3-down linebacker. He came off the field in certain passing situations last year, so that won't be much of a change for him if he were to leave the field in obvious passing downs. I think Kiko Alonso certainly sees himself as a three-down linebacker, and I think the Eagles do as well. I don't think he's really going to come off the field much at all. And then you have Michael Kendricks, who surely is going to think that he's a three-down linebacker as well. He's not going to want to come off the field. So I think of the two players between D'Amico Ryans and Michael Kendricks, Kendricks is going to be more unhappy in a role in which he's not on the field all the time, and I think he's justified in that. I think he showed last year that he's an emerging, really good player. Maybe doesn't have the size that the Eagles like. But certainly he can do a lot of different things on the field. He's become a capable tackler. I think that was a weakness of his in the first 2 years in his career, but he's gotten better at that. He's obviously very good in coverage. He can blitz the passer, and he's got all kinds of speed, so he can cover a lot of ground. So I think he's a guy that will be unhappy in a role in which he has to come off the field.
Jimmy, other than Kiko Alonso's hair being longer, I thought that was another nice chippery there.
Yeah.
Does he look – is he showing you anything to say, you know what, that's justified trading LaShawn McCoy for?
I think, well, first of all, I think that they were going to get rid of LaShawn McCoy whether they got anything back for
sure,
him.
but some people
anyway,
maybe indicated that they didn't get enough back in return.
Well, that's a player that was Defensive Rookie of the Year a couple of years ago, and then, of course, he got hurt, and that I don't know if that'll set him back in 2015 or not, but he missed the 2014 because of the 2014 season because of his injury. So we'll see how he comes back from that. But just in terms of a guy who's not making a lot of money, who is very young and plays an important position in a 3-4 defense, I think they absolutely did get pretty good value for a guy that again they might have just been willing to let go for nothing.
Talking with Jimmy Kempski here, and I want to get your thoughts on Brandon Graham too. I think he's a guy who, he's always a guy who's willing to talk, even when he wasn't playing that much. He was a first-round pick, so the talent's there. He did come out the other day and kind of said, Washburn kind of had him beaten down a little bit. But do you look at Graham as a impact player playing full-time?
He can be. I mean, we'll see. I mean, I think it's an interesting way of phrasing the question, because I think he can make plays, and guys who make plays are, by definition, sort of impact players. When he's gotten his opportunities, he's been able to get to the quarterback. Last year, I think he had 5.5 sacks, but he had 4 forced fumbles. So when he does get to the quarterback, he punishes them, and he's able to knock the ball out. So he's been able to make plays in that regard for sure. So I think he'll make his share of plays. Now, the flip side of that is our opposing offense is going to be able to expose him in coverage. So the Eagles have to be careful about how they use him. I wonder how they'll sort of dole out Graham's snap. I wonder if he'll come off the field in certain situations. Certainly, I think he'll be on the field in obvious passing downs because they want him getting after the passer. But they gave him a decent amount of money, which would indicate that his playing time obviously is going to go up, especially with Trent Cole being gone now. But yeah, as far as an impact player, yeah, I think he's a guy who can make a lot of plays.
I'm also interested in your take anyway, Jimmy. You always have a contrarian view, I believe, on Evan Mathis here. On how is this playing out? Because I look at it as very difficult to understand Kelly's thinking here. Is he just saying, look, you don't want to be here, just like the other guys, we don't need you. How has this Mathis thing gotten to this point?
Good question. Personally, I think they should just say he's not here, and we're not going to talk about players that aren't here. But the Eagles have kind of fed the beast here a little bit, where with Chip saying during the draft that they didn't get any offers for him, and now you have players saying things like Jason Peters said he wouldn't miss Evan Mathis if he didn't come back, and Alan Barber's the starter. And these are two guys, of course, in Peters and Mathis that haven't they've been starters on the left side of that line now for 4 years. I believe they started 40 games together in those 4 years. So when you have teammates that are kind of saying, and the offensive linemen, you look at those guys, and those guys always have each other's backs. For Jason Peters to go, won't really miss him. It's kind of a telling statement. So I really don't expect Mathis to be back at all. And I don't know if the Eagles really did the best job here getting, appropriate value in return for him. Now, Mathis is the oldest projected starting offensive lineman in the NFL.
Wow.
So if the Eagles aren't going to get much in return for him, And if he were to be cut, I don't know that he's going to make as much money as he, as he is now. All right. So I think it's, the worst of, I think it's, if the Eagles wind up cutting him and not getting anything in return for Evan Mathis, then I think that hurts both Evan Mathis and the Eagles, obviously, because they didn't get anything in return. I don't think Mathis will, like I said, I don't think he'll make what he's making in Philly here. So that's the worst of both worlds. But I'd be surprised at this point if he is on the team in 2015.
Do you think it looks bad, the report that came out about the Eagles offered him a deal and then they pulled it when the new regime came in? I mean, I can understand if they brought some in from another organization, but Kelly was here. It's not like he came in from somewhere else and wants his own guys. He worked for the same organization. Do you think it makes the organization kind of look bad?
I don't even understand that report. I mean, apparently the Eagles just offered him more money, and he said no. I don't get it. Like that the report doesn't really make a lot of sense to me. But I don't know. I mean, if whatever the offer was, if there was an offer on the table and he didn't accept it, and then the Eagles pulled it away, that's well within the Eagles' right to do that. I don't think there's any problem with that. I mean, that can happen in any profession where at one point maybe you're valued more than you were at another point. So if you have an offer and you turn it down, then you run the risk of that offer not being there if you need it later. So I don't really have any. And again, I don't even have a full understanding of exactly, because the details are kind of vague. At least the places where I've read about it are vague. So I don't know. I really don't fully understand what the contract offer exactly was. So I can't comment too much on it. But, certainly I don't fault the Eagles for rescinding an offer that he didn't accept.
We're talking with Jimmy Kempski here about the Eagles OTAs finishing up, and then the mini camps next week. And then, of course, August 2nd is when it all happens for real. What did you make, Jimmy, of Kerry Williams' 11-minute interview on 710 ESPN in Seattle where, I mean, if you could find a criticism of this organization, he found a way to get it in there. I mean, that was him. Is this because I find it interesting? Is that most people say, like LaShawn, all right, he's just like bitter breakup here. I don't know that Kerry Williams loved it here to begin with. So is he bitter, or is he just airing some truths that people are going to side with the Eagles because they don't like Kerry Williams to begin with?
I don't know if that's bitter breakup material there, and I'm with you. I think that's Kerry being Kerry. I think Kerry might have said those things if he were still on the team. He said some pretty crazy stuff during his career in Philadelphia here, where the one time where he said, and I'm paraphrasing here and maybe messing up the message here, but it was something to the effect of it's like there's not enough toughness or something to that effect. And I mean, he spoke his mind. He was for a marginal, well, not a marginal starter, but for an average starter in the NFL, that guy always had a crowd of reporters around him anytime he talked, because they knew he was going to say something crazy. So I just think that's Kerry being Kerry. I don't really see it as him being. I mean, maybe there's some touch of him being bitter, because nobody wants to get cut, and obviously when they cut him, he lost a decent amount of money in salary that he was going to be making in 2015. So I'm sure he's angry to some degree about that. But he said crazy stuff when he was here. He said crazy stuff the other day, and he will continue to say crazy stuff as his career continues. Yeah,
I thought it was interesting, though. He mentioned, about the fact, he said last year, look, we're tired, we're working too hard, and he said we were told that was going to be the difference, and here we were exhausted and we got out-coached. And he was basically saying when you play the better teams, you need to be better prepared. He also said, I don't think we prepared very well. I thought that was kind of telling. I mean, now, is that Chip, or was that more the secondary coach who is now gone and everybody seems to think was a big problem?
Yeah, it's the old secondary coach is just getting a beating.
Yeah, he's a punching bag, man.
He's getting a beating from all his old players and from all different angles, and poor guy.
Yeah, really, I'll tell you.
And just as a result, the new guy seems like he's the best thing since sliced bread. So yeah, I mean, I don't know what to make of Kerry saying that they were out coached. I'd actually like to hear him unpack that a little bit. How exactly were they out coached? How exactly did they not prepare? As well as maybe other teams that he's been on throughout his career. Unfortunately, I don't get a chance to interview him anymore. But it'd be interesting to hear more about his thoughts on that than just sort of a general statement. So I really can't speak on what he meant there. But do I buy the tired aspect? I mean, he may have been tired. I don't know if the other players on the team would cop to being tired at the end of the season. Maybe they were. I mean, the defensive players in particular were certainly out on the field a lot because of that up-tempo, fast-paced offense. So I don't know if it's something to really watch for going forward. But carry's carry, and he's always going to speak his mind.
We're talking with Jimmy Kempski here, PhillyVoice.com. We'll get one final one from you, Jimmy. Obviously, every year, it used to be Mr. Lehigh. We're not at training camp yet, but has anybody stood out that maybe the fans aren't very keen on, that has stood out to you that may have a shot to be a surprise guy that makes this team?
Yes, I do have one. I don't think he's a surprise to make the team, but the guy I've been impressed with is Seiji Ajira-Tutu, the free agent wide receiver from the Chargers. I thought he was going to make the team anyway. That's a guy who, over the last 2 seasons, has had he had 16 special teams tackles in 2014, and he had 16 special teams tackles in 2013. That was good for 4th and 5th in the NFL in each of those 2 years. So I think they brought him in to be to be sort of one of those special teams mavens. They lost a few guys in that regard, in Brad Smith and in James Casey. So I think he's basically here to replace Brad Smith. However, he's actually looked good as a receiver over the first 4 or 5 practices that the Eagles media has been allowed to attend at OTA. So I think that's a guy who really gets after it on special teams and might surprise some people as a receiver.
Very good stuff from Jimmy Kempski here on the Sports Bash 97.3 ESPN. And obviously we'll be monitoring more from the Eagles OTAs. And they're mandatory, you must be there, mini camps that start next week. Jimmy, always a pleasure, pal.
Thank you.